love Jerry Seinfeld. Just that initial, what was your feeling when you saw that he not only attacked your premise, but he attacked you
Yeah.
personally? I mean, was that like a sucker punch to the gut? What was that like, CMAT?
Yeah, it was. Well, it there's several layers. Like, it seemed amateurish. Like, this is actually his first opinion article ever. So
Oh wow.
it was like a beginner's attempt at an article, even though he's such a high quality professional comedian. I mean, he's the best in the world. And look, I admire Jerry. I still do. I have his book sitting right here. Is This Anything? It's a great book for anybody interested in comedy.
Yes.
His book is a fantastic book that just came out, and and I think he was coming from a good place, which is that he doesn't want New York City to be dead. His career blossomed here in New York City, during the 80s and late 70s, and but the fact that he had to attack me personally, I thought was, that sort of showed once you the key to an argument is once you attack someone personally, you lost the argument. So he starts off the title calling me a putz or whatever, and he kind of
And go back to Florida.
yeah.
Wherever. Yeah.
Yeah, and look, I still live in New York, but
Yes.
it became this kind of theme that I was like not a New Yorker somehow, and he lives in a hundred bedroom mansion with 150 cars in the garage in the Hamptons, so that's where he lives. That's where he's been the entire pandemic. But his point was, New York City has grit; it always survives. He makes some points, and then he starts insulting me. But let's look at his actual points. Grit is great. In 9/11, New York City, I was in the World Trade Center on 9/11. I lived right
No
next door to the
kidding.
World Trade Center. New York, the love of the world hit New York City then, and we rebuilt. Now, things, you're not supposed to say this time things are different, but the reality is every time things are different. There are so many things different about this time. All of business has been shut down. I mean, New York City is shut down again, and next
I,
week outdoor dining is shutting down. So
as of yesterday, crazy.
yeah,
Takeout though, you can still get takeout.
yeah, takeout. So everybody sits in their home, rewatches The Crown, and bicycle messengers like
Right.
deliver your food. Yeah, you drink or half 50% are drinking, 50% are doing or marijuana every day. You got to do something to get by. But the problem is everybody left. Everybody's leaving. Not everybody. That's I shouldn't say that. But 500,000 people have left New York City. That means less property taxes, less income taxes, and nobody's coming as a tourist. So billions and billions of tourism taxes are just not happening this year, which means the services that New York City is so great at, for instance, garbage collection, teachers, healthcare, police, firemen, EMTs, the subway workers, all of these services are going to get cut. And it's bad now. It's going to be much, much worse next year when the income taxes are due. And
Well,
that's going to lead to less people moving to the city and then less money collected and then so it's a cycle down.
let me. All right. Well, that brings 2 points into my mind. Okay. First of all, the vaccine is here. It came sooner than a lot of people thought it would, and it looks like things really are going to open up by the summer. I mean, you tell me whether you agree with that or not, and
I
whether
I agree
you
with that.
still believe your article, you know, as you wrote it 4 months ago.
Yeah, I mean, everybody even said then when the vaccine comes through, New York City will be
Things are
fine.
going to snap back.
But look at what the damage that has already been done structurally. Like your like the restaurant across the street from Stand Up New York, the comedy club where we met, the Chinese Cuban place is bankrupt forever. It's closed forever.
Uh-huh.
Next to that, Mason Kaiser closed forever. Around the corner, Burke and Wills closed forever. Just this week, Odessa, iconic restaurant in the East Village, closed forever. And these were places made for success. They were successful restaurants. Thousands of other restaurants, not as successful, closed forever. And that's just the restaurants that we see. There's also 80,000 small businesses believed to be closed forever in New York City now. That's going to affect the damage is done. And doesn't matter if a vaccine happens next week, next month. 500,000 people have already moved out of the city. Last week, I read an article 70 financial firms moved out of the city. And people say, oh, well, that's just the rich. Well, whatever. Those are the people who pay for all the services in New York City. So New York City is going to have to fire people. So when I say New York City's dead forever, New York City's already dead for the tens of thousands of hundreds of thousands of employees who are unemployed now. And then the city workers who will be unemployed, the essential workers, the healthcare workers who are on the front lines, they're unemployed now.
Well,
So it's
yeah,
a bad thing.
with the banks relocating headquarters to Florida. I mean, I saw J.P. Morgan Chase. I mean, some major institutions are going to be headquartered down in Florida, even with things slowly recovering and coming back to normal in New York, which they will. I mean, I think yes, it is a tragedy that all those places have closed. Some hopefully will find a way to reopen. There'll be new blood coming in. But even given all of that, do you think the landscape of New York will be changed forever because of the 500,000 people that have already left, because of the institutions that are relocating their headquarters and offices in other states?
Yes, and again, people say, "Oh, well, good riddance to them. Maybe rents will get cheaper." But that's not really think that's not how economics works. Like what's happening is the source that the money that New York City pays to its essential workers is gone. And that means again, fewer services. And not only that, you take like Jerry Seinfeld in his article, he made fun of me like, "Oh, he won't be able to go to a Broadway show because he I mentioned Broadway in my article." I hate Broadway. I don't. I never. The last time I went to Broadway was The Lion King to take my little kids, and they're not little anymore. So that was like 15 years ago or whatever. Like I
A
hate
lot of comedians hate Broadway, actually, which I
because
find odd.
because it sucks. But it's like so boring to just
I disagree.
this man is dressed like a lion. I got to see that. Like, but here's the problem: is that hundreds of restaurants support that ecosystem around Broadway. Hundreds of
Yeah.
hotels, they're going out of business now, and that's not Jerry Seinfeld going unemployed. It's not me going unemployed. It's like young people. It's people who work in those areas. It's 500,000 people who are going unemployed, and they have to leave New York too. And it's sad for this city that we all love. And yes, when Jerry wrote his article, I was very upset actually. And at first, I woke up, I had thought the first week the reaction was horrendous. All these people hated me, including family members. Every ex-girlfriend
Wow.
every ex-girlfriend I ever had wrote an article against me and
Oh,
filled
oh,
with lies too. But that's
I
neither
didn't
here
see
nor there.
those, James.
I won't mention it again. But I thought finally it's the new week, like things are gonna settle down. It was a Monday morning, and I'm getting all these texts like, "Hey, what's up, Putz?" And I'm like, "Why are you calling me a Putz? I haven't spoken to you in 4 years." And like I was getting all these texts, "What's going on?" And Jerry Seinfeld had written this article in the New York Times, and at first I was like, "Okay, this is a very this isn't a good article. It's like, all respect to Jerry Seinfeld as a comedian, but he's not the best for presenting an argument because he's never done that before. But he made some good points. But then I realized this is like also,
And that's why he's been married one time. Sorry.
yes, uh, but this is like one of my heroes, and I really was disappointed. And it's just kept on going. Like, and again, most people who read the article basically agreed with it. But people who agree with it, they just are normal people and they go on with their lives. And then there's this insane contingent that's like there's a Facebook group I'm in, Upper West Siders for Safe Streets.
I'm
And
in that too. Sure.
they 3 or 4 times they kicked me out of the group, and I was like, you can't. I'm actually contributing to the group. I'm a good member of this group. Like I don't hate New York City. You can't kick me out because I care about the city. You care about the city too, and so they would keep
You're,
reinstating
you're
me.
one of you're one of the most self-empowering people that I've ever met and that I've read about. I mean, if you go on your website, it's all about choose yourself and your book and your mantra about people lifting themselves up. So it's ironic that of all people, based on this article, you'd be looked at as the person trying to bring everybody down.
Yeah, I think that was, I always tell myself whenever I write something, I always have to be afraid to hit publish. Like if I'm not afraid to publish an article, that means I'm not saying anything new and I'm not saying anything interesting. So why bother publishing this. And it's the same thing for comedy, right? You don't say a joke that's like the same joke everyone else says. Say something that's unique and filled with tension and unique to you. So the thing that was scary in this article was in the past 10 years, this is maybe the first article I've written, past 20 years, this is maybe the first article I've written where I really didn't have solutions because I spent months talking to people and asking people, well, what are we going to do? And everyone's like, oh, don't worry. When a vaccine comes, everything will be okay. Restaurants will open back up. But I wasn't seeing that. I was seeing people move. I was seeing restaurants close forever. There was a report that had come out, 80,000 small businesses out of 240,000 were going to close in New York City. I was seeing office buildings that were supposed to be full by then in August, empty. And what was going on? Why was it empty? People have to ask why. Why are these things happening? It's not anymore just because of a pandemic. By the way, it's not because of de Blasio or Cuomo either. Maybe they're not the best politicians. I don't know. I have no opinion on that. But it's when you prevent people from working for 6 months, and New York City is a very expensive city for the government to maintain, bad things will happen. Like you can't just tell everybody, like forget about the pandemic for a second. Let's say I took the most important city in the world, and I told everybody, you have to shut down your businesses for 6 months and sit at home. Your instant reaction would be, well, that's going to be very bad for the city.
Right.
And so even without a pandemic, if you just tell people what they did, you would say your first reaction would be that, yeah, that's bad for the city.
That sounds like the Joker, something the Joker would do to Gotham in Batman, like one of those terrible psychological experiments. You're right. But now,
yeah, but we fooled ourselves into thinking that, oh, it's okay because there's a reason we're staying at home.
Our safety, of course.
Yeah,
yes.
Right. And the safety was very important. But the reality is the pandemic and the economy are two different issues. And they didn't treat the economy like a deathbed patient like they treated the pandemic. And
Right.
the economy in a city like New York City, by the way, not just New York City, but LA, San Francisco, possibly Chicago, these cities are in very big trouble.
Well, let me ask you. I mean, you don't agree with these cities' decisions to shut down the way they have.
Well, I don't know if I agree or not. Again, I do agree public safety is an issue, but have the shutdowns worked? Because there's 15 million cases in the U.S. and whatever, like almost 300,000 deaths. Have any of our measures actually worked? Would we have? If there's 15 million reported cases, there's probably 60 million or more actual cases. What's worked? I don't know if anything. We don't really know the science behind what's working and what doesn't work.
And some states that didn't shut down did do better. Some states that didn't did worse. But given that, do you think New York should get a bailout from the federal government? Do you think other states should help us and other states too, like California? Should they be pitching in for us?
Yeah, I do. But I also understand the opposite side of the argument. So I after I wrote the article, a lot of people said, "Oh, you didn't have solutions. You were just complaining." And so I called up various congressmen in town. I called up various candidates.
And did everyone take your call because you were the guy who wrote
the only person who didn't take my call was de Blasio. I did try to call him, and he did not take my call. And he did a whole press conference about me, and then he didn't take my call right afterwards. And but I talked to various congressmen, the various borough presidents, candidates for mayor. I called up the Federal Reserve, and I talked to one of the top people at the Federal Reserve, and I said, "Is this possible? Would you consider buying New York City's municipal bonds and restructuring their debt so they don't have to be as worried about making their debt payments?" And he said, absolutely not, because then every single city in the United States will ask for the same treatment. And I said, but New York City is like the flagship city of the country.
Right.
And he said, it doesn't matter. Like, every city will be very upset, and that's just not our job. Our job isn't to do that. That's not what we do. And that was the only thing I was thinking where you can get like real significant money. Because let's say there's $1 trillion bailout by Congress for the state, just for the states, which they didn't do last time, but let's say they do it this time.
Right.
And $1 trillion is a big number. So divided by 50, that's 20 billion each. And New York State alone needs 30 billion. And New York City probably needs about 50 billion. So I don't know.